When you hear gunfire, the single most valuable thing you have is time, but it's also the one thing you're running out of. That gap, the one between the first shot and the first help arriving, it's often measured in minutes, but its consequences, they're measured in lives. We're going to look at exactly how technology is trying to close that life or death gap.
To really get the scale of this problem, you have to start with this number, 80%. In some of the neighborhoods hit hardest by gun violence, a staggering 80% of the time when a gun is fired, no one ever calls 911. Just think about that. It creates this huge blind spot for police. It means no one's dispatched, no evidence is collected, and that cycle of violence can just keep spinning, completely under the radar.
But even when things do get reported, there's a dangerous delay baked right into the system. The FBI looked at active shooter events and found that the first 911 call often doesn't happen until 2 whole minutes after the shooting has already started. In that kind of chaos, 2 minutes is an eternity. That's the window where the most damage is done.
So this all leads to the big question, right? If we can't rely on people in those first chaotic moments to make the call, how do we get real-time info to first responders? Well, the answer isn't about asking people to move faster. It's about having smarter technology. Now, before we get to the solutions, we have to recognize that we're dealing with two very different kinds of crises here, but they're both racing against the exact same clock. The time gap is a problem in more than one scenario, and the tech has to be able to handle both. On one side, you've got active shooter events. These are the horrific, high-profile tragedies that are over in seconds. But on the other side, you have the chronic, daily grind of community violence. It's often unreported, but the damage it does over time is devastating. Both of them demand an immediate response, but for totally different reasons. One is about stopping a massacre, and the other is about saving a life and breaking a cycle of retaliation before it starts. And if you need a statistic to really drive this home, here it is. The FBI found that most active shooter incidents are over in less than 5 minutes. Let that sink in. A majority of the time, the shooting has stopped before police even get on the scene. Now, that's not a knock on law enforcement. It's a failure of information. You just can't respond to something if you don't know it's happening.
So how is technology stepping in to solve this? Well, the whole field of gunshot detection really comes down to two main ideas. Two different kinds of sensors that are designed to be the ears on the street when no one is there or able to pick up the phone. First up, you've got acoustic gunshot detection. This is the one you've probably heard of. It uses a whole network of really sensitive microphones scattered across an area. When a loud bang happens, software analyzes the sound, you know, how sharp it is, how loud it is, to figure out if it's a gunshot or maybe just a car backfiring. And by checking the exact time the sound hits each different mic, the system can triangulate the location, just like GPS.
The second method is called energy-based detection. Now, this is different. Instead of listening for the sound, these sensors are built to detect the specific energy signature, the literal shock wave that comes from a firearm when it's discharged. And the big advantage here? That energy wave can travel right through things like walls or buildings that would normally block or muffle the sound. Okay, so we have two ways of doing this. One listens, the other senses energy. But how do they actually stack up in the real world? Let's put them head to head and look at the stuff that really matters. Let's start with the big one, speed. Acoustic systems often need a human in a call center to listen and confirm, which can take over a minute. Energy-based systems, they're automated and can send an alert in about 10 seconds. That is a huge difference when every second counts. Then you look at accuracy and false alarms, where energy-based systems also tend to have an edge. And here's a really important one for public trust, privacy. Since acoustic systems are basically always on microphones, people worry about being listened to. Energy sensors don't record any audio at all, so that's just not an issue. Okay, so knowing all that, how should a police department or a city actually choose a system? I mean, it's not just about picking the one with the best marketing. It's about looking at it through the lens of what's actually needed in a real emergency. Well, experts have basically boiled it down to a 4-part test. First, speed. Does it actually get people there faster? Second, precision. Does it cry wolf all the time with false alarms, or is it reliable? Third, accuracy. Does it send responders to the exact spot, not just the general area? And finally, integration. Can you plug it into the systems you already have, like 911 dispatch or security cameras? And really, this is the whole point. The goal of all this tech isn't just to hear a gunshot. It's to buy back those critical seconds and minutes that usually get lost in the confusion. It's about turning a reactive response into a proactive, data-driven one. So knowing the problem and understanding the tech, that's one thing. But actually putting it to work to save lives, that's the final piece of the puzzle. It's about moving from knowing to doing.
So for any city or agency that's looking into this, here's the roadmap. First, assess your own response times and figure out where your gaps are. Second, use that four-pillar framework to benchmark any technology you're considering. Third, get everyone in a room, police, IT, community leaders, and make sure you're all on the same page. Then, before you go all in, run a pilot program to prove it works in your city. And only then do you make a plan to scale it up.
At the end of the day, you have to see these systems for what they truly are. They're not just another piece of equipment. When you do it right, they're what experts call force multipliers. They take the people and resources you already have, your officers, your paramedics, and they make them faster, smarter, and way more effective when it matters most. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? In this fight, whether we're talking about a mass shooting or the violence that happens every day, time is the one thing we can never, ever get back. The technology to reclaim those precious seconds is here, so the only real question left is, what is the cost of waiting?